Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a place where self-care becomes part of your day, a space where you'll learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter, turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare of suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness, and my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 15. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm so happy that you all are here. Today, we're going to talk about a barrier to well-being. You're like, what is a barrier to well-being? Well, in this case, one of the barriers that we're going to talk about is negativity bias. So have you spent more time thinking about negative things than positive ones? Or better yet, let me share a scenario with you. Imagine you're speaking at an event and there's thousands of people that are there, and you just finished your best speech ever. Thousands of people are clapping and smiling and just loving what you shared. But once the event ends, people begin to approach you. Let's say about 3 people, right? One person says, "Great job." Then person number 2 comes over and says, "Wow, your speech transformed my life." And then the third person comes over and tells you, "Brilliant. Your speech was brilliant." Wow, sounds like a pretty good day, right? But then you walk to your car and one person catches up with you. You're excited because you just heard on all these raving reviews with positive comments. Plus, you're on top of the world because you felt that there was so much great positive energy. And you're just on top of the world because of those positive remarks. So you slow down to the one person who's trying to catch up with you. And then that one person walks up and says, quote, "That speech you gave," and then there's a pause. And you're waiting anxiously to say, "Okay, that speech, I'm about to hear something. I remember I heard I was brilliant. I heard I was, wow, great job." And in that pause, that person comes back and that person says, "Your speech was awful." Awful. Well, negativity bias focuses on not the countless or the 3 people that was telling you all these wonderful things in terms of those positive remarks about, "Wow, you are awesome." Instead, you focus on the final steps to your car and hearing someone say, "It's awful." Do you relate to that scenario? Do you often think about negative comments more than the positive ones? If you do, you're not alone. In today's episode, you're going to learn more about negativity bias and really how you're going to tackle it. And you're going to tackle it today. So before we start talking about what the strategy looks like, let's talk more about what negativity bias is. So granted, yes, we went through the scenario, But let's now talk about the definition. So, according to Z. Jing Schmidt, and I want to quote Jing Schmidt. Generally, this is Gene Schmidt. Generally, the negativity bias is an automatic tendency to pay significantly more attention to unpleasant than pleasant information. So Gene Schmidt adds this quote, to put it otherwise, negative events have a greater impact on people's behavior than positive events. So, what can you do to push through that barrier? The next group of scholars are going to give us even more insight. So, Dr. Roy Bouster and his colleagues reviewed roughly about 100 journal articles, and they called their publication this: Bad is Stronger Than Good. The purpose of their research was to review evidence. Their findings are really are significant, and in so many different forms. I loved how they segmented their the differences in terms of their review. So one focused on how to react to events. The other was close relationships. They even had one on memory. Baumeister and his colleagues shared this, and I'm quoting them. Although it may seem pessimistic to conclude that bad is stronger than good, we do not think that such pessimism is warranted. As we suggested, there are several reasons to think that it might be highly adaptive for human beings to respond more strongly to bad than good. But he also adds this. In the final analysis, then the greater power of bad may itself be a good thing. Moreover, good can still triumph in the end by the force of numbers. Even though a bad event may have a stronger impact than a comparable good event, many lives can be happy by virtue of having far more good than bad events. So that says so much, right? In terms of their findings. But then also I love what he shared. What stood out so much to me was when he said the force of numbers. And I love how he qualified that, or they qualified that. The force of numbers. So let's work on that. Let's work on those numbers, right? Increasing those numbers as it relates to really acknowledging the good. So, another favorite scholar and author that I really enjoy reading her work, her name is Brigitte Greenville Cleave. And she's written a book called, and I always have it pretty close to me. I love it. It's called Positive Psychology. It's a practical guide of positive psychology. And she shares wonderful information in regards to positive psychology. I highly recommend for those of you who are interested in learning even more about positive psychology. This is a great book as a great way to introduce, and then also a great companion book. I love being able to refer back to it. I love reading about, the different dynamics as it relates to positive psychology and the things that I have been familiar with in terms of my own research. But then also, I love the fact that she provides great information in regards to strategies. And we're going to talk about one of them today. So she should suggest for the next 48 hours, make an effort to notice the good things in your life first. She shares this, that as you practice this strategy, it can help shift your awareness from negative to positive. It's all part of an activity that she calls, and I love it, 3 good things. I mean, 3 good things. I mean, we can do that, right? Thinking about these 3 good things. So, in the activity, she recommends at the end of the day, think about, the things that went well that day. And it doesn't matter how big or small it is. Focus on the good things. She also encourages that you should share it. You could share it with your partner, share it with a friend, but you don't have to. But she also recommends that you can try this activity with young children. And I really think that is a great approach in terms of sharing it. Although there's no pressure in terms of doing so, but I think it's a wonderful activity to be able to share. And then I love how she also shares that this can be a great way to cultivate a habit of happiness, especially with the younger generation. But I also think it's great to be able to do that within your friend or family structure or any of the positive relationships that you have in your life. It's also a great exercise for your self care squad, right? For you guys can do with each other. So I love this approach. So, this is an evidence based strategy that suggests that doing this practice daily for a couple of weeks will increase your well being. So, think about that. I love again that she mentioned sharing the activity because also in the works of Dr. Baumeister, he and his colleagues have shared the value in terms of maximizing the power of good and increasing the numbers of good. Of course, we talked about the force of those numbers, right? But I also value that Baumeister talks about the importance of sharing the value of consistency and the value of small acts and the importance of combating negative acts. So the small acts of kindness are a great place to be able to tackle and to battle some of those negative acts. And so this activity gives you a great place to start, right? So remember that scenario that I talked about earlier as it relates to, let's say you were working on that speech and you're performing that speech, I should say, and then all of these thousands of people are there and they're clapping and they're smiling and they're joyful. And so the three good things in that is certainly thinking about those three people that mentioned to you at the very beginning that you did a great job, that you transformed my life, and that you were brilliant. So I love that activity in terms of thinking about the three good things. But then also, what I love about it is making it so consistent in your life that it becomes something that you just genuinely do at the end of the day to recognize the three good things in your life. I certainly hope that this podcast was one of your three good things because I what I want us to do now is to kind of dive into an inspirational quote that I hope will continue to inspire you as it relates to your journey. And that inspirational quote, and for those who know me, I do this a lot. I love quotes as some of the past episodes, podcast episodes, I've talked about the inspirational wall. And there's one episode where my fiance, Ken, talks about the inspirational wall in our home. So I love quotes. I live by quotes. I love seeing them. They kind of spark something in me. And so I keep them around me. They're in my home, they're in my office. Yeah, I'd like to keep them on my phone. So this is an inspirational quote that I want to end this podcast with today. And it's from Dr. Maya Angelou. And it says this. Well, I should say she says this. So Dr. Maya Angelou says, I've learned that people will forget what you say. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Think about the people in your life who have increased your positive emotions. I hope you think about the acts of kindness that you have received in this world, no matter how small it may be. And then I want you to think about the positive events that inspired you or the positive events that you have designed that have inspired others. Thank you so much for listening. I hope we can continue this conversation online. Join the Courting Happiness podcast community in Facebook. Don't forget, it's Courting with a K. Our private Facebook community is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. And are you ready to spread happiness? I hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.